Hi, and welcome to the Love Learns podcast. My name is Dionne Zara, just your average girl wishing to learn more about love and relationships. As a young girl, I always dreamt about my wedding day, and to be fair, I still do sometimes. With many couples around me, I quickly came to realise love isn't as straightforward as the movies make out. So I thought I would have conversations with couples who made it past happily ever after to learn more about love. And when I say love, I don't mean like the movies and fairy tales, but I mean LOVE, learning to be open, vulnerable, and empathetic. So if you're ready to learn, unlearn, and discover love through couples, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Love Learns podcast. This week we have Mathew and Olivia, who are going to give us a bit about their love journey and how they met, and so much more about how they got married in COVID and all the exciting things that come with it. So let's say hi to Matt and Olivia. Hi guys.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hi.
So let's just start with how you guys met. Just give us a bit of understanding on how you guys met.
I'm always a bit a bit embarrassed to say, but I guess I shouldn't be. We actually connected online on a dating app, and then we met face to face in a coffee shop in our local town.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that was probably what, I don't know, was it like November 18? Something like that. So yeah, I remember it was on, it was on this app, and it would say, I think at one point you were in rugby, and then I think some of the conversations were going, oh, I'm in the middle of moving, that sort of thing. And the next time I saw the app, it gives you your location, it says you're in London. I'm like, oh no, you're moving from rugby to London. And I was like, oh no, this is terrible, because it was going quite well, I thought.
Yeah.
There was a good conversation going, and then of course you went to Singapore, and then you just said, message me when you come back, but obviously you didn't tell me how long you went for.
Yeah.
So that's a bit sort of very sort of difficult to know.
Yeah, I think
when you're coming back.
I'd messaged Matthew on the app with my number to say I'm going to Singapore. Here's my number to kind of like stay in touch. Like I'm going to go off the app now. And then I went to Singapore for a week or 10 days to go and see family. And then when I got back, it was a few days after, then I got a message from Matthew. I think you were a bit worried.
Well,
I just disappeared.
You got to play it cool, haven't you? But, I mean, it's just like I was sort of speaking to my friends, how long do you think you would have gone for? Because it's quite a long way. I don't know if I need to wait a week, 2 weeks, or just give it a go and whatever. And then it worked out, and then we went up in Costa, and it worked down quite well. Spent a couple of hours just chatting, I think, and nearly dropped the ball on the first one when you ended up paying for it because you offered. But
yeah, I thought I was being polite. So we were at the front at the counter, and I can't remember like how it happened exactly, but I was like,
I was going reaching for my wallet, and I was about to.
And then I
pay,
said, I'll do it.
I was like, I've been stung in the past by.
But like I was saying, I'll get it, but like expecting him to be like, no, it's fine, he'll get it. And then he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh.
Well, it's because in the past there's been just like back and forth, like, no, I'll do it, no, I'll do it, no, I'll do it. I was just like, I'm just going to break that cycle immediately. But then when you went home to your parents.
Yeah, when I went home and then they asked who paid, and I was like, I did, and they were like, oh dear. That's not a good start. Yeah, but I think at the end of that, after we met in person, you asked if we could meet up again. And I said yes.
Yeah, well, conscious effort at the end of that first day to arrange something at the next meeting up.
So Liv, were you put off by having to, like, after you paid, were you like, maybe not, or were you like, oh, actually this could work out, like, and same for you, Matt, were you like, oh, she paid, maybe this is a good sign? What did you think after?
I think for me, I was a bit like taken aback that I paid for the first date. And when I was speaking to my parents about it, my mum was like, well, we should have offered to pay. And I was like, well, I was just trying to be polite, but I was expecting him to be like, no, he'll pay. It didn't really put me off though. Like, I was a bit taken aback at that point, but it was just like a minor thing. I think what really stood out to me more was just kind of how well we got on, and that he was just really easy to talk to, and yeah, it just seemed like a really decent bloke. So yeah, that was more what stuck in my mind than the fact that I paid.
That's good. And you, Matt?
Yeah, I didn't really register, I think, because my approach is generally just to not make a big fuss about sort of, I consider it that it'll just all even out in the end, so not worth paying too much close attention to it. But that's just me. Yeah, I didn't really pay too much attention.
Cool. I think most guys are like that anyway. When it comes to like stuff, they're not into the details too much. As long as they had a good time, it's like, okay, and we go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the most attractive, like, why were you attracted to each other? What made you guys connect even more on your first date?
I like how you both looked down. I think probably one of the sort of overall things which I think was probably attractive is the fact that there was genuine interest more than anything superficial. It is more just genuine interest in me as a person. I think I think everyone probably wants to be sought after or loved, or someone to be very interested in you. I think that's a very sort of core level desire that people genuinely want, and I think that's I saw that in that first date. So that's probably the main thing I would say for me more than anything.
Nice.
I think for me it was he just had a really nice smile, and he was just really easy to talk to, and yeah, we just clicked, like we could just speak really easily, and I remember you being like well presented, like I don't know, I just like a man that's like well groomed, like taking care of himself and dressed well, and he just came across as really like well spoken, and yeah, just a really nice guy. I think that was for me what I took away from that. It just seems like a really nice person.
Very cool. And when did you guys realize actually this could be my partner in crime?
I'm thinking. I think it's just something to me. I can't really pinpoint like a sort of an exact time. I think it's just over a number of over the time that we spent together, it was very much looking in a positive way in regards to that, and it was all every date you go on, all the time you spend together, it all kind of builds up a good picture of what it might look like in the future. But I think if I were to, one thing which really sticks out in my mind was we were probably in the middle of sorting out your indefinite leave to remain, and we went to an application. I can't remember where it was now. In Birmingham. We went there, and I went with you, with your parents. I think it was at the same time, and we came back, and because there's a lot of uncertainty around the application, because the profession had only just gone on a shortage list, and it's a lot of money, and it's very, emotionally charged sort of time and an event. I think we came back and sort of lied down, and sort of remember being in the sort of in the room that you were sort of lying down, and just quite saddened with the way that you were feeling. And I thought if that wasn't that in tune with how you are feeling, then there's got to be quite a strong connection there. And I remember saying to myself that I want to go down. So when I leave this room, I'm going to go down, speak to your parents, to ask to marry you. So I remember that quite well. So I remember saying before I walk through that door, I'm going to make my decision there. That's one of the main events which sticks in my mind.
Wow, so romantic. What about you, Liv?
I think I probably knew a while before Mathew.
The Lake District comes to mind.
Oh yeah. I think just like me, like growing up as a Christian, and just trying to be led by the Holy Spirit, and for me, for a while, I just been feeling just a peace about it, like just peace when I was with Mathew. Apart from the excitement when he was like coming around to visit or like to take me somewhere, I was like so excited, but also just like a peace about it. And also like from when I've been young, and like what I've been praying for in a husband, someone who gets along well with my parents, who's really respectful, who is very supportive and gentle and kind and generous and like educated, like all those things. Mathew, like looking back on that, I can see that Mathew kind of met all of those things. And at the time that we met, Mathew wasn't a Christian, and that was for me a little bit of a not so sure, because I don't want to be, like a long-term committed relationship with someone who doesn't have the same like value base or fundamental belief system as I do, and that came up quite early on, that me being a believer was is very central to my life and how I want to do things. And I think something that really struck me was that Mathew wasn't put off by that he kind of was like, okay, I'll look into it then. And thereafter, you kind of came with us to church, and even when I was working like shifts over weekends, Mathew would still go to church with my parents, and just his willingness just to have a look and be like open-minded and explore it, because he knew that was important to me. And Mathew has since become a Christian of his own decision, which is great. But yeah, I just think, and the fact that he just gets on really well with my parents, that was really important to me. I think they probably love him more than me now. It's been really supportive and just like so patient with me. I can be a bit like and he can be like really calm and like collected, and we just yeah.
What, like when we went to Milton Keynes? It's slightly off topic, but it's like when we went to Milton Keynes to what was it, to register the marriage, and it's just a mess. When we went there, I can't remember what it was now. There was one small tiny little detail which they didn't like, and so the whole trip down to Milton Keynes, because we had to go to somewhere which would accept international, if you like, what one of the parties were international or something, and you had to go to a certain place. You've got to drive an hour that way, so have an hour interview, then to find out it's not valid, so we're going to drive an hour back, pay again to set it up. So I think you were slightly flustered, shall we say? And then
Yeah, I get riled up quite quickly, and I'm ready to have like a heated discussion. And yeah, whereas Matthew was like just completely calm and like handled the situation really well. And yeah, it just felt like we just kind of complemented each other well in that sense. Yeah, and then we can have difficult conversations, and that it's okay. Like, yeah,
That's so cool. Wow. So like you guys have spoken about Liv's parents just now. So when did you decide, Liv, to introduce Matt to your parents? And Matt, when did you introduce? I feel like there's a funny story coming.
yeah. So my parents haven't always lived here, but they moved over from the Middle East in 2016, and I was still living in London at the time. So, and like renting with like friends. So then I moved in with my parents, and they came to London. And then 2 years after that, we bought a house in Rugby, and so that's why when I was on the app initially with Matthew, it was showing between Rugby and London, because we were like going backwards and forwards between the house and stuff. So at the time of me meeting Matthew, I was still living with my parents, and I didn't have like any plans at that point to be moving out or anything. And I'd always be joking around and saying that my parents were my housemates, and they're like the best housemates because they, help with like the laundry and like food shopping and like meal prep and stuff. So the one time, I can't remember where we'd been, but
I know exactly where we'd been. I remember this quite well. we went to Warwick.
Was it the?
It was after mini golf.
Oh, mini golf. That's right. Yeah.
So it was after mini golf, and dropped you back off, and then you said, "Do you want to meet the parents?" I'm like, "Okay." So this was the third date, and this was a week after we first met, so pretty soon. Third date, I was like, okay. So thankfully, I had at least 2 minutes preparation to play it cool, and I think I succeeded. Yeah. So pretty soon, slightly surprised, but thankfully the hallway is quite long and the stairs are quite long. So
you have more time.
Had a little bit of time. Yeah.
I just think for my parents, because they were saying from like even the first time that I met Matthew that they wanted to meet Matthew. It was just really important to them that they knew who I was seeing, and that almost like, I suppose not to like suss him out, but just to kind of make sure that it's not someone outlandish or something.
Well, they got a quick glimpse of me, didn't they, on the second?
Oh yeah, and they dropped me off and they saw you.
Did a drive-by.
Right.
But no, I think just going back to my parents, I know for them it was really important that you were willing to meet them quite early on, and that you weren't like put off by it or anything weird like that. And yeah, I just think from then on they kind of really got on well with Matthew and vice versa, and that's really good because they also live in the same town. That's good that we all get along.
Yeah. Well, they were helping paint the fence in the garden yesterday. So, yeah.
What about you, Matt? How did you introduce your parents to Liv?
So it was probably about 2 months. No, it was about a month actually. After we first met, because on New Year's Eve I was going up to my uncle's wedding. I was just getting married, and his wedding was on New Year's Eve, going up to New Year's Day, and my parents were coming up from the south of the UK, back up, so through the Midlands, and then we were going up to the Peak District. So on the day before, we we stopped off in Rugby, so where I live, and we went to Pizza Express. So it was a larger audience than what I had. So for me, it was just your parents, but for you, it was my parents, mum, dad, and my sister, and my sister's, I think, fiance at the time. So there was quite a few more people to meet at the same time, but fine as well.
I was really nervous. I'm
yeah.
really nervous.
Can you imagine?
I was fine in the end.
Well, even more so because my mum was because of her job, and what your job is. It's effectively my mum was a quality officer of of people that of all sorts of professions. So
I was really nervous of meeting.
But that I think that broke down instantly, did it not?
Yeah, because like working for the NHS, the CQC, so the Care Quality Commission, is like health watchdogs. They'll come and do like inspections of wards and such. And Matthew's mum at the time was a CQC inspector. And like the CQC is like a swear word in hospital. You just don't say it because people just start panicking. I was like, oh my goodness. I had like all these pictures in my mind of what she could be like, but actually she's really lovely.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Told you at the time.
Awesome. So as I said earlier, you guys had to plan your wedding in COVID. How was that for you guys? How did you get around all the crazy, not knowing, not knowing?
I mean, I think it's probably best to slightly describe what our plans were and how they kind of changed. Then so we got engaged in November 90, and then we had planned to do a small ceremony in March, and then we were going to do a larger celebration in August 20. And the reason primarily was so that our living grandparents would be able to attend our March wedding, because some of them were getting quite frail. So that was our primary driver for doing that. And then I think it was on the 23rd of March 2020 was when the UK went into lockdown, and that meant that our 27th of March original wedding in 2020 couldn't go ahead because all weddings and everything like that was banned. And then we're thinking, well, okay, well, maybe the August one can go ahead, so we let that run for a bit, but cancelled the March one. And then by that time you've already arranged quite a lot of things, so it's like, okay, now we've arranged it, we need to unarrange it, and then but on hold, and then we changed the plan such that we did our small ceremony in August, and then we changed the celebration to the following August, so a year later, which that's another story, but those are the main kind of things. So we had to move it, but because we were breaking those two up, it's kind of moving like two, so there's like 4 dates which we had in total. To make it worse or make it more complex, shall we say, we've got people from the UK, people from South Africa, people from Singapore, people from Holland, everywhere. And so it's quite difficult to arrange that, especially when it becomes international and you've got different rules to follow and different states of the world, with regards to the virus and so forth. So there's a lot of arranging, rearranging, in a time where there was very little certainty. So most normal times this shouldn't have been anywhere near
as complicated
much
as it was.
Yeah.
I think also, just to add on to that, was so we went into the first wave of lockdown like lockdown happened, as Matthew said, like 4 days before our legal wedding was meant to happen. And then it was about the summertime, I think, when things started to ease up again. So we didn't want to just kind of make like a snap decision to say do it like on a weekend. So we had a bit of a run time to kind of get things in place, like to get the vicar like ready, and the church, and obviously, and flowers and cake and whatever. And then because it was between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2 that we got legally married at the end of August. But actually, so I mentioned that I was living with my parents at the time that I met Mathew, and it is something that I, in my convictions, I didn't ever want to live with someone, like live with a partner until I was married. And Mathew was very respectful of that. I think you were on board with that from the beginning. But when the pandemic hit, and I knew that I was going to be working in wards that where there would be very poorly COVID patients, I didn't want to be bringing that home to my vulnerable parents. So but at the same time, it was just quite a hard situation, and it was kind of sprung on us, so I had to make a decision quite quickly of what we were going to do. So it was the day after the announcement, so on the 24th, we decided just to kind of say our vows. So Matthew's parents were on Zoom, and my parents were there in the living room, and us too, and we just said our vows. So it wasn't our legal wedding, but for me it was important that in the eyes of God and in front of witnesses that we made our commitment to one another. And then I moved out of my parents' home to kind of keep them safe, and moved in with Mathew, while we were still kind of watching and waiting to see what was going to happen. And then as soon as there was an opportunity within a kind of runtime, we then did the legal marriage. It was incredibly, just the uncertainty was just really stressful. Like, even if you're not aware of the stress, that the stress was kind of there. It was definitely not an easy time, but definitely lots of stories for
very
grandkids.
Difficult. Could make a really good book, actually.
You guys should definitely write a book. It's crazy. Like, I think you and another couple that I know got married in COVID, but they still haven't had like their white wedding. They're kind of still waiting for that, everything to kind of settle down before they do that. But they've done their legal, so they've kind of moved in together and decided. There was a pastor afterwards who blessed it, so it was like they felt comfortable doing that. But initially they had the same idea as well. They didn't want to move in until they were married, but time kind of like rushed, that COVID kind of rushed that for them. But yeah, it's everyone's story is quite different, and you just have to move with the motion kind of thing, and not be so like strict to your own plans, like, because I said this date, it has to be this date. But you kind of relax a little bit and just be like, I know this is not what I wanted initially, but I just have to go with the flow. And at the end of the day, it's the marriage that's the important thing, isn't it?
That's exactly what I was going to say when you said that. Yeah, for us, it's the fact that we're married, and that's what we wanted. That's what we've got to focus on. And like for me, especially like being a girl, I suppose, like I'm still really want to have that like wedding celebration and all the fanfare and the flower girls and the bridesmaids and just all of that. I really still want that. But at the end of the day, that's just like the icing on the cake. Like it's not essential. I think we are really blessed that we were able to get married when we did.
Yeah, it's a lot of difficult things to. There's just so many difficult things and decisions to make. So I think some of what makes it quite difficult, or certainly towards the beginning of the lockdown, was that We also wanted my grandfather and my granddad to attend. Like we did not a face-to-face invitation, but we did it over FaceTime because doing it through a letter just wasn't quite good enough for me. I think had to be sort of FaceTime. So we weren't allowed to go and see him because the hospitals are kind of, I think they kind of sort of closed up a little bit before the sort of lockdown had happened. But my mum was still able to go, and so she went there. She went to see him. She was seeing him regularly, and so I FaceTimed my mum, and then we could speak to him. We had actually planned to go and see him actually, but we weren't able to. So, and it was such an amazing call, which unfortunately ended up being the last time I spoke to him. So he passed away in May of 20, which meant he couldn't go to our wedding. But it's like that's another just crushing blow that you have. So desperate to get him to go. He was 91, and I was intending to travel down to come and see it. He was still up for coming, right up to the day that we had to cancel it, which is amazing, but yeah, really tough. So there's a lot of difficult things which have gone on. Keeping your parents safe by not, because you work in the hospital. It's like you could be bringing home every day, and so all these difficult decisions. But I think ultimately, what we have done, was the right decision, in my opinion. And your parents are still well right now, so I think we made the right decisions personally.
Yeah, it's certainly not been easy at all, and even though we've tried really hard, particularly to try and have our legal wedding down in Emsworth so that your granddad and your grandma could attend, and then things just happen that are just out of your control. Despite best laid plans, things just happen, and I think also it's just letting go, and just for me, it's just trusting God. By myself through this whole process, just having to say Lord, I trust you with this, because there's nothing else you can do. Just at the mercy of situations that are out of your control. Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your loss, though, Matt. It's such a trying time. The amount of grief and loss that a lot of people are facing, not just family members, but weddings, funerals, not being able to see people, not being able. There's a lot of still I think a lot of underlining issues with COVID that wasn't socially developed before we had COVID. I don't think we as a nation had set up for this kind of pandemic. Even though we didn't see it coming, I don't think we were strong enough in the first place. I don't think the NHS was strong enough in the first place. I don't think our mental health in communities were communicated quite well either. So I think when stuff like this happens, people rush to those things trying to get answers, and don't tend to get answers because everyone else is trying to figure out what exactly is going on. But it's so sad that you had to go through two losses, not just your wedding day, but the loss of your granddad as well. So I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Honestly, it's not a nice feeling at all for me, even it just being someone listening to your story. But yeah, on a lighter note, what do you guys what were you expecting before you got married about marriage? What was your expectations?
I think genuinely, I imagine most people have different opinions on what they expect, because certainly for me, my reference point for marriage would be family, so my family, so my parents and my sister. That was my reference point. So it's just simple things, one probably small difference, if you like, was that in the evenings you sit in the lounge and you watch TV. that's kind of like that was that's what happened, when you're growing up. But I think potentially with your family, your parents, I think it seems to me, certainly when I went there, it's more sit around the dining room table and chat, basically. I think comes on to something else, but it's like I'm I'm not really one for talking too much, so sitting around talking around the dining room is just like, otherwise it might just be yourself talking to me, and I'm just like, I don't know.
I thought you did really well.
No, I don't.
Oh dear.
I like to just stay in my head, really. I'm an introvert, but I'm an extrovert when I have to be. It's kind of like I much prefer being an introvert. So that's probably just a silly example, but yeah, I think it's just habits that you've seen growing up.
I think we both had, we're both really blessed to have had like really good examples in our parents. So Matthew's parents this year married 38 years, something like that, and my parents have been married like 37 years. So and they're still going strong. So I think we've both been blessed to have been brought up in homes where we've had such good examples of marriage. I guess for me, I knew, I wasn't aware that it was something that you have to work on, and I guess just maybe from like speaking to my parents and like things I've read and things I've listened to, that you kind of have to choose to love someone, and it's that conscious decision that I'm going to kind of put someone's needs above my own, and I'm going to try and make them as happy as I can, and just try and love them in the way that they best receive love. And something that I found really helpful in kind of getting us ready for marriage was our local pastor here in Rugby. He'd pointed us in the direction of the marriage preparation course by Nikki and Silla Lee, I believe, which is linked to the HTV church. And so he lent us the DVD set, and we religiously sat every week and and did that course, and it was really, really, really helpful, and just it's really, I guess, put things into like a way that you could understand it, and like really like practical strategies, and even things like, are you more of a saver, or are you more of a spender, or and like when you're in a conflict or you don't agree with each other, what are the modes that you tend to go to? Like I'm more of a Rhino, Mathews more of a Hedgehog, and I can really see that now. Like even now when we're having an argument, that's the modes that we tend to go to, and then it's, well, how can we like improve our communication? And so I'm not too much of a Rhino, and Matthew just doesn't kind of keep quiet in the corner, like. So yeah, that course was really good.
Interesting though, because with respect to Hedgehog versus Rhino, I think it kind of changes. It changes depending on your situation. So I'm a Rhino when I want to be, and I'm a Hedgehog when I want to be. But I think in marriage it's slightly different. Certainly for me, because I find that Rhino, just me personally, is potentially less of a, I don't know, it can be maybe a risky strategy sometimes.
I don't think so.
Well, so it's yeah, it changes. It's really interesting. Like the things that work, Rhino all the way. No, I didn't mean like full on charge, like angry, red in the face, slamming fist on the table Rhino, but as in like a assertive. Sorry, you said something.
That's cool. No, I was saying I did that test as well, and I was the hedgehog, and I realized, I definitely like shut down, try and like gather my thoughts before I even start moving again. So it's kind of like, okay, but when you have a partner who's a Rhino, it's kind of like, why are they following me? Leave me alone. I need to like get my thoughts together, please. But then there was times where I could be like, no, I need to make my point clear and like try and be super assertive and everything. But it's just finding that balance, isn't it? Like giving each other the space to like either calm down or to like get the courage to actually speak up as well, and then communicating what the problem is and solving the problem rather than fighting at each other. You're fighting the problem. So conflict, if that was one good tip for conflict resolution in our relationship when I was in a relationship. Okay, what advice would you give a couple that have recently just got married or got married in a pandemic? Which one do you guys prefer to talk about?
I think notes that I've got down are for more generic sort of question in terms of just general advice, and that I think it's probably really just important just to know what's important to your partner. Because I think I don't know, there are some things which, it might be different to how I would have done things, but if it's really minor, then you just let it go, But if it's some like stepping on the toes of something really important to you, it can be a real, it can be a bit of an issue. So I think it's important to know, what's important to the other person, and then the next thing I would say is probably, so it's only from my experience. I'm not a professional in this area, but is the love languages, which comes in that preparation course, which I think is actually really powerful. There's 5 love languages, so
I'm gonna remember them all.
I'm gonna try. So there's words of affirmation, there's physical touch, there's acts of service, quality time, and yes, I was going to get there. And I think just to know, you didn't think I was going to get there, did you? What? Have a nice little sort of. So I think it's important to know which the other person is receptive to, because you could be saying, well, if they like words of affirmation, but you're always sort of giving them a cuddle or whatever. If they don't like, if that's like their kind of weakest love language, then you're not conveying the love that they want to receive. That makes sense. And I think even if you're skeptical about it, I think everyone, if you really think about it, then you really do find that some of them just almost don't even register. For me, I mean, genuinely sort of words of affirmation mean very little, whereas I think quality time and physical touch are some of the really important ones for me. So if it's words of affirmation, it almost feels like you might not be being loved in a way. So I think it's important to know what love languages your partner is receptive to, from my experience.
Very cool. No, definitely. I definitely echo that. And I think it's once you know, and then you can kind of like make a conscious effort to try and show that person love in the way that they best receive it. So again, we're quite opposite in that. My top one is words of affirmation, and that's Matthew's like bottom one. And like one of my bottom ones is physical touch, and that's Matthew's top one. So I need to make a real effort to, like, give him a cuddle, give him a hug, or hold hands or whatever. And Matthew needs to make a real effort to tell me that he loves me and all those things. But yeah, that is really important. And I guess also just not, I know it sounds really like cliche, but just not really trying not to like sweat the small stuff. Just kind of like, it was like choosing your battles, like just letting things go. It's really not
making it sound terrible.
No,
like,
like...
done on like a helmet, like a battle axe. Not like that.
No, but things like really like minor things that you just feel really annoyed about, but then when you look at them objectively, it's like it's really not important. Like things like again, we do things differently.
Here we go.
So like Matthew doesn't want to have anything. It's like when I wash up and then I leave it on the side to dry, because I don't like to dry it up because it leaves lint on the cups or whatever, and then I get like fluff in my tea. And Matthew doesn't want the kitchen to look cluttered. And then we can have like an argument about, well, like how come I can put it away, or because I don't like drying it up. And
well, we compromised in using the dishwasher.
But it's like you can get yourself so, well, for me, I can get myself so wound up about like a series of small little things that we just do differently or come to the situation differently, but actually it's because we have different experiences and we've been brought up differently, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and it's not making those small things into big things. Like it's just letting it go, like it's fine, like whatever.
I think it's such a silly example, but by using the dishwasher, it's really simple, really silly. But it kind of then
really helped.
Well, it's then workable for both parties. So if you can find, even if it's a small thing, which don't make a big fuss about it, but if you can find a solution that works for the both of you, it eases like that little bit of tension. But if that's a little bit of tension every day or something, it can build up, and it can be a little bit. But it's just finding that workable solution.
I think just adding on to that is, I think we've kind of revisited this recently actually, of like how important it is to communicate with one another. Like even I think for Matthew, like he's very aware that words of affirmation is my like top love language, and he doesn't want to say anything that could potentially make me feel like hurt or upset or anything like that. Whereas, and I really appreciate that, but at the same time I want him to be telling me when I'm, doing things that maybe annoy him, so that I can change my behavior at the time.
Yeah.
Instead of like Matthew keeping quiet about it, and then like later on, if we do have more of an argument, then it kind of gets brought up then, and then we can't really remember what the situation was. It's not that effective. There's just like continuing to communicate and just how things are and how we are, and
it's a balance between not sweating the small things
but still communicating,
but making sure that if it is building up, then you find a workable solution, which still got to practice on that.
Yeah, we're still working on it.
But it's you keep learning, don't you? And then everything improves. So.
Yeah. Awesome. What would you guys say you learn about yourselves now that you're married?
I think one of the key things for me is developing my ability to be empathetic towards people, and more specifically yourself, because I think it's something to go to say, be empathetic towards someone based on your, the way you are, but I think it's further to be empathetic towards someone based on their basis or sort of what they're coming from. So how do they see things? I think it takes so much more effort to think, okay, how do they see things? And then why would they be feeling those things based upon that, on the situation that's happened? Or so I think it's really, a step change in being able to feel what somebody else might feel. That possibly didn't make sense, but it did to me. So
no, it makes a lot of sense.
I found this one really hard. I guess.
Maybe you haven't learned it.
Well, I guess just going back to the love languages. I think definitely the words of affirmation is still quite high for me, but I think also like acts of service has also become quite high, and that if I can, do something for you, if you do something for me, then I feel really loved or really like cared for, which is quite interesting. How that's kind of changed a bit for me. What else I've learned about myself? I don't know.
That's it. That's cool then. We can move on to the next question if
Yeah, not sure.
that's fine. So this is a question I ask all the couples towards the end of the episode, which is what have you learned about being open, vulnerable, and empathetic in your marriage?
Again, I found this quite a hard one to like get out succinctly. I guess what I've learned about being committed to someone in marriage is I'm just thinking about like Jesus and the church. So that like sacrificial kind of love of like putting someone's needs before your own and thinking, if needed, I'd kind of put my life down for this other person. Uh, and I guess that then kind of leads to, just being completely open with that person and really trying to, to find out what is important to them and how you can best love them and put their needs before your own. I guess I just feel really comfortable with Matthew. He's now my bestie, so it's just quite easy for me now to be vulnerable with Matthew, like if I'm having a bad day, or just to be completely open and vulnerable with him without feeling like any judgment or feeling like I need to be a certain way for him to love me. It's just quite unconditional. I think that's what I'd say about that. That's all I have to say about that. Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think with regards to openness, I think I generally try to be someone who is open and truthful as much as I can. In my job, with people I am around, um, I almost don't see a point in lying. I can't. Almost don't see a valid reason to lie. I think it just generally makes things more difficult for everyone involved, no matter what it is. Sometimes struggle to see the point in lying. So openness is really my default, really, and truthfulness. So I think vulnerability is an interesting one because with my granddad passing away last year, that was difficult. But what I'd normally do is I normally just internalize things and you normally just keep things to myself in my head. I'm kind of okay with doing that for the most part, but a big blow like that is a little bit more tricky to handle and internalize. So I think that was new in that I opened up to someone who is not, say, my mother, my father. So that's certainly a new experience for me, if you like. Vulnerability to that level, where you're experiencing quite a lot of pain and just grief, really. So yeah, that's So that was new. I think that's not something that. Yeah, I think that's something that can could be open up to in that sort of way, being vulnerable to Olivia in the future, which is good because sometimes you need that outlet. And then empathy, and probably going back to one of the previous questions, I think that certainly just developed, in my opinion, a higher degree of empathy towards people. And still think there's probably ways to go further, just truly understanding what you're feeling, why you're feeling that. That will really help restore marriage for the long term, really. So,
Awesome. I love how you guys just look at each other and just be like, okay. Thanks for coming on to the show, guys, and being so honest and open with us. If people wanted to reach out and just find you guys, where could they find you or get to know you a little bit more? How can they reach out?
So I'm quite active on Instagram. My personal page is live, so LIV and then the number 4 Yahweh. And then my art page is live, same thing, LIV and the number 4 fluid art. So yeah, I'd be happy to connect.
Awesome.
Yep, good Instagram pages. And I've got a YouTube channel completely unrelated to this, and it's just my name, so Mathew Alexander, so Mathew with 1 T, and I'm you'll see me because my profile picture of me in my wedding suit, so I'm looking really dashing, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I will leave all of the information in the show notes, so guys, go check them out. Go and check out Mathew's YouTube channel and Liv's Instagram art page as well, so you can get to see what they do in their spare time as well. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. I really appreciate this and you taking the time to come onto the show. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.